Good morning, everyone. I think yesterday we had a great conversation regarding some query that followed by our data extraction process. Pratham and Matt built a process to get some content from individual PDFs. We dump those data into a CSV file or the orchestrator queue, and we discuss once we have those data, how we are going to deal with that to report some results based on the user's requirement. And the topics that we are going to discuss today is something happened prior to the data extraction. So, and Pradam, correct me if my description on the process is wrong. So basically, Treasury will send a bark file which contains a lot of individual PDFs to us, and this file will be dumped into AWS S3 bucket, and then that is the only available shared location that our individual performer bot can access. And therefore, we need to basically extract the files, put it into the centralized storage. That's the one goal. And the other goal is we need to build a queue to keep the key value pair for the individual files name and their location in S3. And later on, our performer bot will access that queue and process those files individually. We will split the work to the performers to extract them. Am I correct, Peter?
Absolutely. No. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You said it right.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah. So I think there's still
Oh,
a question mark regarding
can you
how
guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Pritam, loud and clear.
Yeah, my headset sometimes. Yeah. No, I said, yeah, you were right. Yeah. That's exactly.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for confirm. Yeah. So there's a question mark regarding how Treasury will send that bark file to us. So there's a possibility that they will dump that file to a shared Windows or Linux location, which our first dispatcher bot can access, and then we can extract those content and send the extracted content only to the S3 bucket instead
So,
of that
so
big
Mo,
zip
if
file.
you recall, we have been mentioning about EFTU process. There is another group who will be writing a script, and the information I copied you in that. Fani had sent an email about that. POC, the person point of contact, and the form had to be submitted. So I think that piece is again coordination is required, and the what understanding was, and again I was not part of the discussion. Matt was that this script is going to dump the file directly into S3, which need to be confirmed. The script they
Oh,
write is going to dump this file from a shared location. Treasury is going to do their part. SDT location they call it, secure data transfer, whatever that the intermediary position, and from there, that EFTU process is the one which is going to transfer this the tar files, the bunch of tar files from there to S3 bucket. So that's the one which need to be worked on. And I
okay.
think I was told, they some kind of discussion happened that they will be able to do it, which I
Okay.
was not part of.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks for providing those information per time, and that lead to today's topic. So since as you may know, so the AWS charge you the data transfer in and out of AWS. So basically, per the information per time provided, so the zipped or the compressed file will be dumped into S3 bucket, but that file cannot be directly consumed by our bot. So we need the content, not the zip file. So we probably have to download and we will I think Matt also mentioned the object in the S3 bucket is immutable, so we cannot directly modify anything. So we have to download the big bark file locally. We extract content and send back to S3 bucket. So there has to be a round trip to get those data extracted. So if we go with the dispatcher mode approach, and today we're going to see alternative way, which we may leave the data, sitting in AWS without transferring in and out, and we get those content extracted directly in AWS, and then do some, dispatching process later. So we will see how it works. That is the context of this story. And then in my shared screen, I have four Azure bucket listed. The first one, IRS PDF input, that represents a bucket that Treasury will drop that the zip file, one or multiple. And then we have the second bucket, the PDF repository. So that is the centralized location we are going to store those, extracted PDFs. And then I also created two buckets, performance one and two, stating those two buckets represent the like a temporary storage our bot will talk to. So we will see how those buckets be used. But let's focus on the data transfer piece first. So then I go to this PDF input bucket, it's kind of empty. And I also go to the PDF repository, second bucket is also empty. So let me try to upload a file to this input folder to simulate the treasury data transfer process. So I have this archive.zip file uploaded, and it contains
No, it is
multiple.
the format is different. It is star.zip. The Linux files. So archive is more Windows, but their format is star.zip, which is two-step, compress and what do you call zipping. So I think they have a different format. Tar.zip is the extension type.
Gotcha. Yep, yeah, good
And we,
information
we, we
to
have a
them.
code. Matt already has a code to unzip those using the UI path.
Wonderful. Cool. Yeah. So I believe, there should be a problem to, extracting from either zip or tar for any solution. So I think we should be fine. And now I'm going to upload this file to the Azure bucket. And I think during the last call, we also mentioned that, how can we get notified when this file, arriving to our storage, right? So the beauty of this, it's a serverless, AWS solution is like, the we can set up some like monitor in the bucket. So, all the process, follow the process will be kicked off only when this file arrived in this source destination, source bucket. So say I can have this save file dropped, and then if I refresh this second bucket, you can see I get those contents extracted. So that extraction only happen when it detect a file dropped in the bucket. So if Treasury didn't send a file for a year, then no computing resource will be consumed during the year. So it's more like on-demand processing. And then we have those files dumped into the second repository. Let's see how the performance can get those files. So I have this performer one and performer two bucket sitting here. So I will show you the lambda function I created. So this is the first extractor. We just see how it works. It takes the zip file, extract it, and put it into the second bucket. And now let's go to this dispatcher lambda function. I will kick it off manually for this time so we can see how it performs. So it just run and give a log saying, hey, I moved this student one CSV from the second bucket to the performer one. And if I come here, refresh, I will see the student one CSV available here. And that file should be removed from this repository. So taking out. So basically, this second repository also act as our queue. And I can do the similar thing for this performance too. So if I switch back to my lambda function list, run this function, just run this test, and I can see that this student 10.csv get moved. And again, if I refresh here, I should expect 17 instead of 18. And then the file comes here. Okay, and then that the next process will be let the performer you talk to individual bucket, download this file, extract the content as we do, as Pratham mentioned earlier. So we have that process already. We extract the content, but after that, the only required step for this process is removing the file from this staging area. So we only need to keep one file at a time in this bucket, saying, but let's assume that the performance tool has completed the work. Is remove this CSV from the bucket. We manually remove, to on behalf of the bot. So we come here, we provide a confirmation. I'm fine with deleting this file. So just go ahead to remove it. So I just remove, and if I close this button, the page will be refreshed. And what we're going to see is that 10.csv file got removed, but the 12 come to this queue. And that is because I have another monitor to check whether this bucket is empty or not. So if it's empty, then it grab a file from this list and it became 16. So basically, if you compare the orchestrator queue approach with this one, I would say the orchestrator queue method is more like a polling a model. So each performer will go to the queue to pull a record, and it definitely need to update some status. I think Pratham mentioned that. So if I'm a performer too, I want to work on this student 13.csv file, I need to mark this file as something like started, and then the other performer will not touch it. And whenever I finish, I should mark it as done or whatever. So indicating this file no longer need to process. But all those performers go to the same queue and determine which file they need to work on based on the status. So I think that is the how those both coordinate through the queue. But for this lambda method, it's more like a pushing way. So like each performer will only look at their staging area, and there's only be one file sitting in the staging area, once a time. So they don't worry about how many files sitting in the backlog. There is a lambda function in place to be responsible for pushing a file to this their staging area. So it will monitor, like see which board is free, and then push a file to this staging
So,
area.
so Mo,
Yeah,
I have two questions really
sure.
quick, if you don't mind me interrupting.
Yeah, sure. Definitely.
So the checking of the files that you had on the previous screen,
Uh,
that is done
this one?
by what? The lambda function?
Correct.
Okay.
So
Now,
yeah,
how would, and I get that. That was just one question.
sure.
So how do we scale this for more than one form
More
and for
than
higher
one.
volume?
Uh, you mean we have more files to process, or we have more?
More form types?
It I would say it
Are
may
you going
not
to use
matter.
different AWS buckets, or how would you do that?
Do you mean that besides CBSV, we have like MP3, PDF, other type of media
No, this
files?
would be more. So let's say they have form, I'm just going to throw it out, form 901, and then they have another form type, form 1202, and then they have another form type, how would we scale that? Would that be in different AWS buckets?
It just depends on how we want to divide the work to the performer. So let's say our performer one is compatible to handle both like two types of form. So let's say that's the performer can do that work, and then this capability need to be the lambda function when it routing those file, you need to know the capability of each performer. Saying, if I find the form, I forgot the name. I can say it again,
I
Chris.
just I just made up numbers. Yeah.
Okay, let's say from 1040. So if I see a 1040 form and performer one can do that, lambda function need to know, performer one instead of two can handle that. So then it sends this file to performer one's queue or staging area. And if you encounter, let's say, 1099, you know that performer one cannot do that, but performer two can do. So this lambda function, since it's responsible for this distribution, it need to know the capability of each performer and send the files,
So then,
differently.
Tom and Matthew, I guess my next question would be, let's say they were talking yesterday about adding more forms for 75,000 employees, right? Which would be obviously different form types. When you think about scaling, are you envisioning adding a new unattended bot for each form, or how are you planning on doing that within the queues and such?
So I
Or
think, yeah, no, I think there are multiple ways, as we said. One is definitely, when different type of forms comes. This time, we are handling 6850 BU and NBU, which are like same set of forms. Then
Mhm.
that other set of forms comes, we can create a new queue altogether. So I was thinking of handling it through the queue, marshalling it through the queue. But here again, I think. I don't know what the other challenge would be like, so you are completely eliminating a dispatcher here, right? What I'm seeing here, a UiPath dispatcher. You don't want to queue anything
Right.
in the orchestrator.
So you would have more than one dispatcher, or just one dispatcher still? Because you
I
have to get them, you have to get them, you have to get them to S3 into different um, staging areas, right? So that means you're going to have to somehow classify the different forms to go into whatever staging area. Then you're going to have a performer bot come out and work. I think what Mo is suggesting is have one performer bot work one type of form in one staging area. Does that limit our scalability? Does that make
uh,
sense, Pritam?
I think I'm still trying to process the whole thing, so because I was all through along, we were thinking queuing mechanism is one,
Right.
where and then the performer can be triggered based on as soon as we have the queue items, the performer can wake up and start doing the job. But here, how do we notify the performer? That's another thing. There's no way of a performer knowing unless manually someone tells, okay, uh, there are files in the repository,
So then
or the
Mo,
staging.
can the performer bot or bots monitor the S3 staging area to see if there's any forms in there
Yes, so
and trigger a bot?
you're absolutely correct, Chris. So let's say this file, this file, it just get processed by the performer, and then it need another file to be feed in, right? So in this case, my current sample application just randomly take a file from this full list. But then, if we introduce additional, form type, I think we just need to add a condition to see instead of looping everything from this bucket, just bring the form type that I can process. Like each individual file should have either metadata or whatever to differentiate that this form 1099 or is 1040, and then
So,
it just look at the matched for file type to be pulled into its staging area.
so once it's done in the staging area, does that form go away?
The performer will be responsible for removing the file from the staging area. So it will just take it, extract it, and then delete it from the staging area.
And you can do that with the CLI tool?
Uh, I believe we can do it through the UiPath process. Like we just monitor a local folder. So Matt, correct me if I'm wrong. So the our bot will not talk to S3 directly. Instead, we'll mount that S3 bucket to a local folder, and then the bot will just work on those local copies. Is my statement correct, Matt?
Um, Not quite. I don't think so. I think in sort of the midst of this, there's a couple of problems that we do need to solve. One
Okay.
of which is, how do we know to kick off our bots? Like, how do we know that Treasury's given us the files and that we're ready to run these unattended processes? So I think that's a challenge, and it sounds like there might be some functionality in here that you mentioned where we could monitor some way somehow of whether or not there are files in the S3 bucket, and that could hopefully indicate to us that the bot needs to be run programmatically.
Correct.
So once we have those files in the S3 bucket, though, each performer would pull the relevant file, the next file in the queue, down to the local machine to do the document extraction. And then afterwards, after it's extracted all the data and what have you, it would then delete that file from its local location and then move on to the next item in the queue.
Yep, we're on the same page.
So I think regarding the AWS sort of queuing mechanism, I think that can definitely be very helpful. I will say that, and not to diminish it, but some of the things that I've seen in the past may pose as hurdles with going that route. From what I've seen so far, and what was expressed from the platform team, I don't know that the AWS like I'm not sure what to call it, dashboard, portal, or whatever, this UI that you're looking at, they don't at this point expose that to developers.
Gotcha.
So our only lens into the S3 buckets or AWS in general is through the CLI tools, of which developers don't even have access to the CLI tools on their local machine. It has to be run through a VM. So there's a lot of hoops, and hopefully they can simplify that a little bit, because I'll tell you, building the library was a huge pain. To build something, hoped that it worked, pushed it to a VM, and then realized I needed to make more changes. So that was a big pain. So hopefully that can be a little bit simpler. But the other side of it is one of the things, and I don't know if this is applicable here, but depending on business needs, the performer processes would be pulled off of running something if we needed more capacity for another automation. So there could be a possibility where we give, say, 10 performers to this process and then decide, all right, now this other higher priority one needs some bots. So we're going to move 5 bots over to this other one. And so my concern would be, if this AWS queue is pushing files as opposed to the performers retrieving files, we could end up with orphaned ones if that were to be the case. I'm not saying that it is, and I'm not saying we can't work around it, but that is something that does come to mind that, you know, we'd have to consider. But the other part of it is, once we have developed this solution, we are essentially handing it over for another team to maintain and support it. And so this would have to be something where if something goes wrong or they have to make updates, they would also need to know how to do the AWS like lambda functions or whatever, if changes needed to be made. And I think between those, it might be less direct, but it may be the simpler and supportable solution to have UiPath Orchestrator provide the queuing mechanism for this.
Yeah, I agree with you, Matt. So, you know,
And
I
then
always
the
say,
exceptional handling, exceptional handling and logging also. We have access to the logs and everything, so more visibility there. And to and think and to your point, uh, I was told, so everything has to be within the UI path, wherever possible, use UI path, CLI to, or I mean, in this case, CLI or the activities. So anything outside, the support again, it goes to the AWS team, which will be a kind of, Somo and team may shut it down, saying that, we don't want them to maintain anything scripts outside the UI path
Yeah, I definitely agree.
or the
So,
Lambda functions.
yeah, so for time, you know me, so I'm more like an infrastructure guy. So that's why I always think cloud first. So bear
No, no,
with me. But
yes, yes.
I'll definitely accommodate the existing technology that team is familiar with. I try to catch up, but at the same time, sometimes I would like to bring some ideas or concept that AWS can achieve to the table, and at least we can have a backup plan in case we encounter any difficulties, such as the Matt mentioned, how we are going to be notified if the file arriving in the S3 bucket, right? So, so I showed the full workflow, today, like, from the treasury dumping the file to the performance side, but, we don't have to adopt everything. So let's say we can make it as simple as having a monitor in a bucket, and when a treasury dump a file, it just send an email to some of us, so saying, hey, treasury send a file, let's get it work started. So we can just shoot an email, so we can have some small pieces to improve the area that our current UI path or the existing process feel difficult, and then we can just using some small chunk to get it improved. But we don't have to apply everything that Lambda or serverless provided by AWS. So I understand that there's a gap to accommodate all those new things, and team may not be familiar with. So it should be painful to take this big step. I definitely take it. So yeah, and also
So
Matt mentioned we consider the scalability, right? So that is also a concern that I have. Let's say we have a queue, and then we have like this two performers taking the files from here, saying number 13 and 14, they all mark as started, and at that time we have a high priority task come in, and performance 2 is taken away. But then how are we going to do with 14? So already been marked as started. So do we like manually change the step to back to pending, so the other boss can pick up, or how do we do that? But
The queue, the
for
queue has
yeah.
different statuses, the queue automatically manages that on your behalf. And then as a RE process, the last step in the process is after the completion of our steps, all the validation has happened, we mark it as completed, and and that's where the bots are smart enough that anything has been processed will not be picked up by another bot. Uh,
Yeah.
maintain
Yeah.
as so you can see, in progress or something, processing, blah blah blah, and then the when the file is under processing, it will change the status, and then the code, the UI path code is responsible. The developer is responsible to change it to successful or failed or whatever it is, depending on what the status is. And then there are the exceptions also in the code which handle the status of these queue items, queue transactions, if you will. And then
I
later
don't
on we can.
go ahead, Freedom. Go ahead and finish.
No, no, I'm good. I'm good. Yeah.
I think I don't I find value in what you've done here, Mo, and I'll give you some background. So we're going to go through a UiPath upgrade during the blackout period. That's the plan, at least. You never know with the IRS or the government period if that's actually going to take place. So the IRS is going to be adopting some more emergent technologies. For example, for Matthew and Preetam and Mo, you're all familiar with RPA. In phase 2, in 2025 of an upgrade, they're targeting to allow us to start using autopilot. And if you remember that, if you were on the call that what's happening in RPA call, Jyoti was talking about having unlimited AI units. The reason they're doing the unlimited AI units is so that we can start using autopilot, which will build our code for us, that kind of stuff. So they want to start driving that efficiency even harder. And so what I would suggest, and I tend to agree with Preetam and Matt on this, that in this particular instance, this particular project, the queue is probably going to be the most ideal avenue. However, that doesn't, like Matthew said, doesn't diminish the importance of what you've done. What I would suggest you do is let's prepare a presentation and a demo showing this and record it and do a PowerPoint so that when it comes to the point where they start doing more advanced stuff, because we know the IRS, any federal agency, is about a year to 2 years behind on technology. They're driving for more technology, especially in the IRS. That way we have this ready and we can demonstrate the benefits of doing this for storage instead of some of the other avenues they have available for storage. Does that make sense?
Makes sense. Agree.
Yeah, I love this. You had apologized and mentioned that you're primarily on the infrastructure side, and so you think cloud first. I would say don't apologize. There's absolutely no need. Please keep bringing these ideas up. At the minimum, I learned something, and I think that on the IRS side too, the impression that I get is the AWS area they're very immature with. And so any of your expertise to get them going forward is going to be something that would benefit us as well. So I do really appreciate you bringing this up and kind of giving us this demo.
So what I'll do, Mo, is I'm going to reach out to Cornell as well and find out who we can contact in the cloud side that maybe could use some of the technologies that you're familiar with in doing this kind of thing. And I agree with Matthew. Don't apologize for being an infrastructure guy, because that's why I have you helping to solution things. And this is anything that you come to is something that we may learn from, or we may say, oh yeah, we can use that better than what our original idea is. So there's nothing to apologize for. I agree with Matthew.
Yeah, thanks for saying that, Chris and Matt. Yeah. Cool, good. I think it's a great conversation. Yep. So let's keep like we discussed. Let's keep with the orchestrator queue for time being. And probably I need to find a time to learn something from you guys. So I'm not familiar with orchestrator queue. I may watch some training video, but maybe at a later point I would reach out and see how we can set it up in order for the performer to pick it up. So we'll do some further discussion, but I think we are clear on the direction. We will take the orchestrator queue as a primary option, and if there's any problem we cannot solve, then we can consider alternative. So okay.
So, Matt, sorry, we are almost over. So, what I'm hearing is, so because both the bots have to interact with the AWS, the S3 bucket. So, what I'm hearing, we cannot do it from local. So, how do you test it? So, I mean, I'm just curious.
Oh, how did I test the CLI tools?
Because yeah, everywhere we have to interact. Like the dispatcher has to, talk to, fetch the file locally and then unzip it and then move it back to.
Yeah, so they installed the CLI tools on the unattended bots that we have access to. So I published some of my testing processes and was able to run on the unattended machine. And then I was able to use the automated testing to go through and make sure that it did the verification of anything that I executed.
So we will need your help. So again, you had access to the VMs in dev?
Yeah, you do as well.
Okay. No, I haven't tried. So I was still trying locally and simulating S3 location in my local, just to prove it out. I am able to do it, and then eventually replace it with the what do you call S3 location.
Yeah. So in the HCO folder under the IT tenant,
right,
we have an IEP and an IRS VM that we can utilize.
Okay.
Is the CLI tools on both IEP and IRS?
Yes.
Okay. Which one has only, so the IEP has SharePoint and the IRS does not have SharePoint. Is that right? Am I correct?
Flip that around.
Okay. IRS has SharePoint, IEP does not.
Correct.
Okay.
And if I say if we have some difficulty with some of the boards to access S3, I guess probably we can consider dividing the process into two. Let's say we have a proxy board to handle the traffic between AWS and SharePoint, and we have another board to do the extraction, and those boards can work together. So like it may not be necessary to have a single board to handle both file transfer and the extracting job, so they can like a pair to get the work done if it's not too complicated.
That does bring up a good point of something we need to figure out, which is how many bots we have available to us.
That was just going to be my next question, Matthew. We think alike. No, and that's scary to me, Matthew, to be honest with you. I think you just connected with one of the many voices in my head. I do have a question, Matthew Predom. So our challenge is moving the folder structure from AWS S3 into SharePoint, right?
Right.
To save those files. And I hear you saying that on IRS, we have SharePoint and the CLI tools. What's preventing us from using that IRS VM to do that?
Nothing. I think we would want to pursue that.
So what was Somya talking about yesterday that we have to figure out how to move those? And I think there was a blocker on that we talked about, right?
I think where he might have been headed down was to see if there is a link between S3 and SharePoint without having the bot's local storage as a middleman.
Okay.
I think worst case, if we don't get an answer to that, yes, on the IRS VMs, we'd pull it down from S3 and then push it up to SharePoint. And it sounds like his preference, and something we had touched on briefly, was maybe that aggregator automation at the end of the process pulls down all of the documents from S3, zips them up to keep the folder hierarchy, and then pushes that, or not necessarily zips, but pushes that folder structure in one upload to SharePoint instead of individual files tens of thousands of times.
Okay. Yeah, I just missed that part. So thank you for clarifying it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Thank you. I think we have a great conversation today. Thanks for attending, and let me know if you need anything. Have a good rest of your day, folks.
Thank you, Mo.
Thanks,
Thank
Mo.
you.
You too. Take care.
Bye.
Have a good one.